Joshua of Egypt, Chapter 8, Training Weeks. Crow crouched down on the branch of a tall tree. With one hand he steadied himself, the other held his bow. Around him were his best students, positioned among the trees to keep a watch over the forests of the north. It was his team's shift for this sentry duty. Crow stared straight forward, a milky white haze shrouding his eyes. He flew high above the treetops right now, peering at the land at a distance. His beloved raven playing in the drafts of wind, guided by the thoughts and whims of her master. He could see the green pastures and farms of the distance, the rivers that cut through the land, soaking the growing crops, and the workers diligently tending to their fields. Far to the south he saw the port, with ships coming and going. The drifting clouds cast lofty shadows across the rolling hills and treetops of the land. Two boys played near the father as the three watched a flock of grazing sheep. The blissful green pastures and blue skies turned dark as the bird flew over a distinct part of the earth. Bubbling dark clouds cast deep shadows across a bleak and barren land. No green grass of trickling water sweetened this dismal area. A sick haze hung among the branches of the lifeless trees. At a distance, and where the bird wouldn't fly right now, was the dark palace of Morlick. Crow paid special attention to the border of the shadowed land, noting any sign of moving forces. Nothing living, or dead for that matter, moved across the border at this time. The view pivoted around as the bird altered direction again. Its high, slow flight changed to a swift descent toward her master. Crow watched the dizzying sights blast by him and the world come closer as though he were falling. Then he saw himself in her eyes as she approached quickly. Flapping her wings to cut the speed, she finally came to a perch on his forearm. Upon touching him, his sight returned to normal. The first time he experienced this, he nearly tumbled out of the tree of the sensation of falling in the skies. However, now he merely longed for the moments of soaring in the heavens. Here. He held up a hunk of meat they had saved for her from his breakfast. She snapped it up eagerly. His keen senses were alerted when a person dashed through the thick underbrush beneath him. He quickly shifted his position to get his sights on this intruder. With his bow ready, he took aim, only to find that it was Joshua stumbling through the trees. What is he up to? Why is he blindfolded? All right, Joshua, slow down and use your senses. Haman walked through the trees, rolling his eyes at the fallen dogman. Joshua pulled up a part of a blindfold so he could see with one eye as he addressed Haman. I'm trying, but I can't hear trees. You have a nose and 2 ears. Use those. You also have 2 hands and 2 feet. Go slower and make sure you don't trip over any root again. Now put the blindfold back on and find that pig. Joshua grit his teeth, slid the tight cloth back over his eyes, and slowly turned around to feel his way through the forest. Haman leaned up against a tree trunk as he watched Joshua sniff his way through the trees, stumbling often as he went. What's going on here? Crow asked from behind Haman. Ha! Haman nearly jumped out of his skin. He looked back at Crow and scoffed. Don't do that to me! Where did you come from? Crow nodded upward. I'm on watch today. Haman straightened himself out. I guess that's why you asked me to work on his training today, though I'm not as good at teaching tracking skills as I'm at tactical knowledge. Crow watched Joshua trip over a root and barely catch a tree before falling again. What are you doing? Teaching him how to use his senses to track something. I had one of the cooks let a live pig go in these woods, and Joshua is to find it, without using his sight. Clever. I've noticed that his sense of smell and hearing are better than he realizes. Forcing him to use them will prove an excellent lesson for the boy. Haman and Crow walked a little further, and Joshua got out of their view. Haman calmly stated, He's doing better than I anticipated. He's only been training with us for a week, and he already outclasses some of your students. He doesn't realize it, but his senses make him a good scout and tracker. He has passed tests that usually take a student months to master, though his skill with a bow leaves a lot to be desired. Haman winced as he watched Joshua fall, face first into the grass. Are you going to push him to train harder with the bow? It might be better for him today to go back and get some target practice in. No. His skill will need time, and that is something we don't have. Tomorrow he'll start training with Brienne on using other weapons. I suspect he'll be better with a sword or axe. Haman could not withhold that little smirk. I'm sure she won't complain about getting to work with him. He might get some extra lessons in hand-to-hand combat if she gets too frisky. I'm not too worried about her. She has calmed down since she discovered he's not a slave to play with. But I'll keep an eye on her, just in case. Haman heard the distinct sound of a pig's squeal in the distance. Sounds like Joshua's getting the hang of this tracking. Let's see how he does wrestling a pig. You could have used a sheep or a goat. Something that would be less of a struggle to catch. Haman grinned devilishly. But that wouldn't be as much fun. He laughed and looked upward at the treetops. So, any news from your scouting today? Everything's quiet, just like the past 7 days. Crow almost sounded annoyed to say that. I wish I knew what this was all about, Haman said. I want to believe Cersei is just being cautious, but I worry there is more. I don't worry. Truly? Haman didn't buy that. No, I always expect an attack. That way I can treasure the peace all the more when it surprises me. The shouting of Joshua interrupted Haman's reply. I got it! Damn! Joshua was coming toward them with the sound of the pig squealing turned into a ruckus as he lost his grip and the animal went dashing into the woods. I had it! Joshua yelled. Haman and Crow both watched Joshua, sans a blindfold, running through the trees after the pig had finally caught. Joshua got close enough to attempt a flying leap, only to miss by a few inches. The pig fled as fast as its fat little hooves could carry it. Enough, Crow stated, and pulled back his bowstring. He let it go, and a magical arrow flew deep into the trees. With the sound of a rather harsh squeal, and then silence, the pig was no more. Crow saw the startled look on Haman's face. It was going to be dinner either way. Joshua finally got to Haman and Crow, and held the tree next to them to catch his breath. The blindfold dangled from his fingers. I got it. It slipped out of my hands. Haman nodded his head to the student. You passed the test. That was good tracking. Now, go collect the pig and return it to the cook for butchering. All right. This is going to be the best tasting pig I've ever eaten. Crow put his bow away and looked up into the trees, sizing his next move. I'll get back to my men. Tell Magus he can come out with his unit at sundown. I will. Crow ran toward a tree and planted both feet into the trunk and leapt from it to a lower branch of another tree. He used the momentum to swing himself upward into the limbs of the various trees around them. Soon he had vanished amongst the foliage, only to be seen when he desired. Joshua held Julia's hand as they made their way back to their quarters. They had just finished a fine dinner with the others and were ready for bed. Do you think the meat was a little tough tonight? Julia asked. Not as tough as it was to catch it. What? Never mind. Julia tilted her head his direction and listened to him. You're groaning every time you step on your left leg, and your arm is a lot stiffer than normal. Are you injured? No, I just tripped and fell a few times today. My body is aching. She smiled. Come to my room. I have something special for you. He gingerly stepped into her room. There was hesitation in his eyes as he looked around the neatly kept room. She was masterfully moving around the space on her own. It didn't take him long to realize she had memorized every detail of this room so she could manage without help and without sight. Sit on the bed and take your clothes off, she commanded him. I don't think that's, I like you. You know that. It's just, she laughed as she felt through a large leather bag. Don't be silly. I'm not wanting you to sleep with me. I have something that might help the pain. But I need to feel your skin when I do. It won't work through clothes. Oh, I see. Okay, I guess it's all right. He stripped down to his undergarments. Even though she was blind, he couldn't fully undress in front of her. Ah, here it is. She pulled out a small flask. I asked this nice servant to help me go into the woods and find a few ingredients that are good for balms. It would amaze you at how little these kids know about healing balms and lotions. You know about healing medicine? Joshua asked. Of course. Julia came over to him and felt his shoulders to get an idea of how he was sitting. Turn so you're sitting with your back to where I am. She got on the edge of the bed and waited for him to reposition himself, so his back was to her. If this tickles, let me know. I need you very still. She ran her hands over his back, feeling the muscles. Wow, your fur is messy. You need a bath. Okay, tell me where it's sore. Joshua was rather enjoying her soft hands running across his back. His shoulders were rolling and he wanted to rub harder. He suddenly tensed up when she got to the muscles around his shoulder blades. Oh, right there. Oh, yeah, that hurts. She dabbed some oils onto her hands, and they began a practiced rubbing regimen on his back. She kneaded down hard like it was a lump of dough being prepped for the oven. It hurt at first, but he didn't flinch. The sensation was of warmth from the rubbing, but yet cooling. Wow, that feels nice. What is it? She massaged the oils into the muscles between his shoulder blades and then worked up nearer his neck. Olive oil mixed with mint oil, some clear alcohol, and ground bark of the willow tree. Does it feel better? Joshua leaned his head down with his chin nearly on his chest while he let her motions sway his body. Where did you learn to make this? She changed and worked down one of his arms. My education back at the Temple of the Oracles was not only in interpreting visions, but in healing medicines. Only a few blessed oracles can summon visions on command. The rest of us have to wait until they happen. The temple needs to make money, so we made and sold these oils and medicines to the locals. When the war was in our city, they brought us to the healing tent to help with the soldiers. I was only a child, but I learned a lot about how to help with pain. Now tell me, where else does it hurt? Oh, all over. My chest hurts, my legs hurt, even my tail hurts. She got up, walked around to the other side of him, felt the bed to make sure she was in front, and said, Okay, just take my hand and put it where it hurts the most. I'll start there. She waited with her hand out. Joshua took her small wrist and put her hand near his shoulder at the upper part of his right pectoral muscle. She felt him and pushed a little here and there to find the tightest spots. Oh, you really must have wrenched this muscle. Here, let me work on it. She put a little of the oil on her hand and then rubbed it into him. With the skill of a clay artisan, she massaged the muscles from the sorest point outward. Joshua couldn't explain how, but it was like she was spreading the pain out and lessening it until it was better. Her hands were all over his chest, feeling him in ways he hadn't much been felt before. He enjoyed the sensation, perhaps a little too much. It wasn't the pain management, but the feeling of her gentle palms against him. Your chest, it's, bigger. She started the statement and instantly blushed. She tried to rescue herself. When I first found you, I felt your body, and it feels like your muscles have gotten bigger. The training's paying off. It amused him at the way she was stumbling around with her words. Julia changed the subject. I wanted to tell you how proud I am of you. What do you mean? She moved to the other side of his chest. You're going beyond yourself to learn and grow. I meet so many people in this world that are satisfied with their life how it is. When opportunity to grow is given to them, they turn it down for the status quo. I also wanted to thank you. Well, thank me for what? For taking me with you. I've acted so brave and strong, but it was just a cover for my fear. This world is a big, scary place. You've never let me walk it alone. I know that if I'm lost, your hand will be there to guide me. Being blind makes life grueling. I must rely on the help of others. You hardly know me, but you make sure to always be by my side when I need you. Joshua stopped her massaging and took her hands off of him. I think I know you better than you want to admit. We've spent all of our time together for these past few weeks since I first met you. And I must admit that I have my reasons for being so nice. I like your smile." She smiled, her cheeks turning rosy. Joshua's face faded down. "Since you cannot see, you don't realize that not everyone smiles at me. Most look scared or disgusted at the sight of me. But you've always smiled. You have a beautiful smile." Joshua brought her hand up to his face and just about kissed it, but stopped. He merely sniffed it. "I think we're both going to smell like mint tomorrow." She laughed and nodded quickly. "Yes, but considering how you smelled before I started, it will be an improvement." "Oh, so that's why you wanted to rub mint oil all over me." She held out her hand. "Please help me up. I need to wash my hands off before I go to bed." Joshua got up while helping up Julia as well. He led her over to a washing bowl, and then bowed out. "Thank you. I do feel much better. Good night." "Good night, Joshua. Rest well." She listened for the door to close, and then took a handful of the cool water and splashed it onto her face.